which is why, today's topic, we have David Golan, Dr. David Golan. He's the kind of doctor who actually put in like a lot of hard work and brain power than, guys like me, who just appear in places, do a bunch of things, and then call ourselves doctors. So David is a PhD in stats from Tel Aviv University. I think he was a postdoctoral researcher at Stanford, where he met his co-founder, Chris Mansi, and started Viz.ai. And, David, we'll go fairly deep into your commercialization strategy and your tech development strategy as we go down. He serves as Chief Technology Officer at Viz.ai. Uh, One sec, I think, and we obviously have Karley, close friend for the last few years. We met, I think, for the first time in Vienna at ECR last year, and then. Became very close. I actually had to look up her designation because I just called her AI at GE. But then it turns out that she is Vice President and General Manager of AI at GE Healthcare. And she's essentially the driving force behind all of GE's AI today, which is summarized into the Edison, platform. And I'm sure we'll get to hear more from Karley about that. She is like David, both of them super overachievers. So Karley is, Duke undergrad, worked in healthcare for several years. I won't give away how many years. And, HBS, MBA, came over at GE and, trying to do really cool stuff. Thank you, both of you. And, before we open up the floor, I will present, some of the learnings that we've had from the last few sessions. And also, the attendees, we have close to about 100. Feel free to use the chat option, use the Q&A option. Whatever way you want to communicate is okay. Except don't send me emails right now because I can't check. But other than that, just feel free to write questions as we discuss. This is supposed to be very open, very very conversational, very much off the record, if I may. So before we dive deep, I will quickly share my screen and. Yes, so there we go. This is the web series on AI from Caring, webinar number 5, 4th June 2020. I have a very hard time figuring out which time zone I should mention, so I just choose to write my own. So maybe next time I'll do some other time zone. But the last 4 webinars. So our webinar number 1 was about AI replacing radiologists. And the idea behind that webinar was that we are not going to discuss this anymore. No, AI will not replace radiologists. So any questions on replacement, please make them very good, because we went fairly deep into what work a radiologist does, what work AI has the capability of doing, and then explored the intersection of what tasks a radiologist does, the complexity of each of those tasks, and what tasks AI can do from a capability perspective, and then from a utility perspective, right? It doesn't mean that if you can do something, it's always good to do it using AI. So this was kind of settled. We did talk about there are certain tasks that radiologists just cannot do. For example, predicting patient wait times, right, and appointment delays, right? These are very much statistical inferences that are drawn. Creating one type of image from another type of image. This is work from our group where we, try to create diffusion weighted images from T2 weighted images of the brain. Synthetic PET imaging, right? This is another thing our group works on. Can we create one type of, can we create PET images from CT images, right? These are things that humans cannot do. They're all very much under research, But then certain things are FDA approved. There's GE's recon engine for, this is the CT recon engine. More recently, their MR recon engine also got FDA approved, and both use deep learning. We are aware of Subtle Medical that has, again, recon engines in place. This is just so these are just examples of things that humans just cannot do. Like, we cannot create one type of image from another type of image, at least not most of us. Webinar number 2 talked about radiologists doing AI. We had Dr. Paras Lakhani from Thomas Jefferson University. He published one of the first papers on chest X-ray AI. It seems way back in 2016. He was there along with Dr. Felipe Kitamura, neuroradiologist plus neural network coder. He is, championed several Kaggle competitions. One of the few radiologists around the world that codes neural nets as well, in Objective-C, if that matters to people here. And then third, we had my colleague Dr. Vasant Venugopal, who specializes in AI validation, and they all described their experience, right? How is it to be a radiologist, testing AI, using AI, building AI? So very, very, very insightful. The third one was, what do tech companies want from radiologists, right? As I said, the first 4 webinars were very, very centric on radiologists. We had Prashant, Ankhel, and Vijaya. Prashant is the founder of Cure AI. Prashant is here. Ankhel runs Quibim, a quantitative imaging and AI company based in Valencia. Vijayananda leads much of the AI product development at Philips on AI. And the key insights were summarized by Vasant, in fact, in this very short article. AI companies or tech companies want open-mindedness. They want radiologists that can think out of the box. They still want faster, better, and cheaper annotations. Like, that thing is not going away anytime soon. But they want us being radiologists, not to build products. They feel that they are much better at coding. They are much more geared from an engineering perspective, but instead they want radiologists to manage these product teams and spread the good word around, right, about those products. So very, very insightful again. And then last webinar was how to build AI that works, which is basically what separates a cool algorithm from a useful one, right? We see all sorts of cool use cases emerging, and many of them may not be very, very useful. But how do you make that segregation? And there we drew upon some insights, where the first one was AI without radiologists, right? There's a lot of post-processing, recon, etc. that happens where a radiologist may not even be involved. The second was workflow and clinical validation before building or before going in for FDA approval, because this insight came from the fact that there are several AI algorithms out there that are FDA approved, but hardly any are being used. And we'll touch upon this today as well. So what is the essential ingredient for that? So it's workflow and clinical validation, and clinical validation before actually going ahead and spending millions of dollars on FDA approval. And the most interesting insight was, how do we add clinical correlation, right? How do you, in a chest X-ray algorithm, how do you add the fact that the patient has a declining SpO2 or has 103 degrees fever, and those kind of insights. So with that, we move on to today's topic of discussion. I've tried to circulate this particular invite as far and wide as I can. And, thank you to, we have close to about 120 people now logged in. Thank you so much. And, now it's time to talk, and, we'll see where we go from here. So, so we'll I had written down a few questions as starting points, and maybe I'll start with David. David, just to set the context, right? You did a PhD in statistics.
Yes.
and now you run an AI company. What's the difference between AI and statistics, right?
Oh, wow.
What is AI, right?
I guess
And
the number of parameters, right? Uh, no, but seriously, I think there is a difference. There's a lot of buzzwords going on, and the way I personally like to define it is that AI is the theory and practice of teaching computers to perform cognitive and perception tasks, and machine learning is one subgroup of algorithms used to achieve that, and deep learning is a subgroup, and statistics is more about inference and learning about the world, and understanding and prediction. In prediction, everything is fair. In statistics, you're trying to really understand things like causality and make sure that there's no leakage, for example. But at the end of the day, it's all really about thinking and rationalizing about data, and definitely a lot of the things that sometimes surprisingly, even the classical statistics courses in the beginning of the PhD actually paid off tremendously when, for example, discussing with the FDA.
Interesting.
Right, because you're sitting with expert biostatisticians, and you're actually arguing about methods to compute confidence intervals, because they care about statistical inference. They want to make sure that your device actually does what you're claiming what you're claiming. Think about biases in data collection, bias sampling, all sorts of sequential inference and all that. And these are things from statistic textbooks, and not something that typically would touch on in a machine learning sort of education, or at least not to the same extent.
Interesting. No, that's super interesting. Karley, what do you think? At GE, do you guys draw any distinctions, like, that this is the stats team, this is the machine learning team, and this is then the AI team? Like, how do you guys structure, your teams? I know that this is not like linked to commercialization per se, but just curious.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really structure it that way. I mean, we have a central data science organization, global, Bangalore, Budapest, San Ramon, some of the most brilliant people I have the honor to work with. And then we have data scientists embedded within our products who just know the physics and the workflows inside and out. What we're discussing now is more methods to achieve an objective. So we don't really segregate by the methods. We really segregate by the problem people are trying to solve, and then we throw the best methods available at that problem. But it is important to ground people in definitions always, right? Because these conversations can talk past each other unless we do it. So I like the way that David framed it quite a bit.
No, so that's perfect. So that means, like, for the next 45 odd minutes, AI refers to something that humans can do that now machines are kind of doing. I guess we could and obviously things evolve with time. Cool. So with that, I just wanted to wake people up with that question. That was just my intention.
Wake people up with a conversation of statistics. I like it.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe next time I'll do a joke. So, so David, coming back to you, right? So I talk to a lot of people about AI companies, and we take pride in working with almost all the AI companies that are out there. And, whenever we talk to people, it's more grounded in curiosity. Like, when I ask someone the question, which AI company around the world is making money, right? Or is making revenue? Amongst the top 3 names that comes up, Viz is always there, right? And you guys are not very old. Like, I think 2016 was when you started.
4 years old today. This is our
today?
Happy birthday.
Wow, amazing.
His birthday today, yeah.
Nice. Happy birthday. That's amazing. That's really cool. So on that happy note, like what separates you guys? Like, why do I keep hearing from everyone that Viz is one of those companies, and it's unanimous, right? And is it? So what do you guys do different?
So I mean, I think we can comment at a few ways, and this is just speculation, but two things. First of all, we both neither Chris nor I came from the radiology/imaging industry, which I think is fairly unique. Chris is a neurosurgeon who came to Stanford with the goal of improving workflows, understanding that he as a neurosurgeon in the operating room actually has very little to do with the outcome of a patient if the patient was delayed for 4 hours. I was a very happy postdoc at Stanford working on statistics, machine learning, and deep learning. And I actually was hospitalized at Stanford with a suspected stroke about 4.5 years ago. And luckily it was not a stroke and I'm perfectly fine. I was discharged the day after. But the glaring issues of stroke workflow were very evident. Lying on a gurney, unable to move or speak, and seeing the delays there firsthand in a hospital that's considered one of the best in the world, and probably
exactly. That was going to be my point. Like, how can this happen at Stanford, right? But
yeah. So I mean, and actually, this is how Chris and I connected, and shared our story. And Chris said, this problem that you're describing is not new. It's everywhere. This is why I came to Stanford, and oh, wouldn't it be great if we could solve it? And we decided to solve it. Nice. So we really came at it from a problem perspective and not from, hey, it was deep learning. Let's look for opportunities to use deep learning to solve problems. That's one thing. The other thing is our target audience, which probably stems from the same thing. We're, and I mean, this is a radiologist crowd, but we're not selling to radiologists. Our intended users and our target audience is the neuroradiologists, the neurointerventionists, and neurologists, the people who deal with stroke. I'll just say, just in case anyone doesn't know, our product, Viz.ai,
yes,
analyzes CT angiograms of the head, identifies large vessel occlusions, and alerts on them to a mobile app. And here, radiologists, you guys are generalists. You deal with so many things. Stroke is just one thing for you.
So, David, just to clarify, sorry, while there are a few radiologists, like, I don't think there's too many of them right now, because that was kind of the intention, was to broaden. So there's actually quite a few people who are doing AI product and quite a few people who are now doing, developing AI, and like, I'm just reading through the names. So it's quite a diverse crowd. So
that's too bad, because I prepared a lot of radiologist jokes.
No, but I think everyone can still laugh at them.
Okay. No, but really what Viz.ai, what we did early on was identify a group that is passionate about stroke, and that's the entire world, that was just undergoing a massive transformation, because thrombectomy was entered into the guidelines in 2015. So it's just now scrambling around an entirely new workflow paradigm and needs a solution. And also in terms of a workflow, a considerably more complex workflow, where patients typically arrive at the periphery hospitals, 70 to 80% of patients, but the treatment is given in an entirely different hospital. So it's a workflow problem times I don't know how much, because you need to connect those people in various geographic locations. And as we started drilling in, we realized, well, they're not a radiologist who's sitting at a computer when they're working. They're actually out and about or sleeping or with the kids. They're not at a computer. So we need to provide them a mobile app. And an alert is not enough. You need the images, and the images need to come fast. And then the first thing they ask is, well, how do I know what's going on with the patient? How do I communicate with the rest of the team? So really, you use 3 words, healthcare AI products. From my perspective, it's really about being a product. We solve a problem. Sometimes parts of the problem are solved with AI. And we have AI in our name. We're very proud of our AI. But it by no means the only thing that we do, not even the majority. We feel that being a mobile app, making the images available to physicians anywhere, anytime, really, really fast, providing them with secure chat, having a cloud environment that supports all this, allowing, for example, we have stories of physicians who would instruct their team what to do from a plane on the Viz.ai platform. from a boat, from a plane, like green eggs and ham. It's really about addressing pain points, and this is what I think really differentiates us from most of the other companies. Is that, I mean, maybe we just didn't know any better, but we have identified a gap, a problem, a pain point, and we solved it, or still working on solving it with whatever technology. If it's AI, we'll build the AI. If it's something else, if it's a button in the app, we'll do that, as long as it helps the patients get the treatment they need faster. So I think that's sort of the Viz philosophy, and I think we definitely took a leaf from Silicon Valley, culture of obsession about product, obsession about failing fast, and obsession about understanding the true pain point of the customer. That is not necessarily that popular in the healthcare industry.
Got it. No, great. Thanks so much for that, David. I've taken a bunch of notes on stuff we can dive deeper into. But Karley, what is Edison, and how is it addressing the whole commercialization bit of AI?
Sure. So first, thanks for having me on, Vidur, and David. It's great to be here with you, and everyone who's watching. Start sending questions, because I think David and I both really want to make this a dialogue, and we don't want to stand up here and pontificate too much. But so what is Edison? Commercialization of AI. I'll start with what is Edison. Very, very simply, it's tools to build and tools to deploy. Tools to build means we want to open up both internally with GE Healthcare and externally to the ecosystem of innovation, tools to build the most powerful healthcare apps possible. And like David said, yes, there's a heavy emphasis on AI because of the strength of the technology, but it does not limit to AI. We're trying to solve a problem. And so, we've launched our Edison Developer Program. You can think of that as what Apple does with opening a developer toolkit. If you have an idea, there's tools for you to build with. If you have a mature solution, there's ways to engage. But the thinking here is, when I think about what any one vendor or builder can do on their own, it is so small in this scale of what the industry can do together if we work hand in hand. I am biased, but I think we have the smartest data scientists in the world sitting at GE Healthcare. If they do their job to the best of their ability, I think they'll have built 3 to 5% of the solutions that tackle these problems when you look out 5 years from now. So we're really focused on creating that ecosystem of innovation that can pull from the best and the brightest. I get to be on a panel with one of them today. That's the building side. On the deploy side, it's really all about how do you set infrastructure within a hospital that allows that innovation, whether it's built by GE Healthcare or built by someone outside of GE, to be deployed invisibly into the workflow and meet clinicians, radiologists, the whole care team where they are. Actually, let me pause really quickly on the invisible statement. I'm actually a little bit sick of that phrase, even though I use it all the time.
I think you invented it, right? Invisible AI.
I might have invented it, but it's come to mean almost nothing.
Just very lame joke. Invisible AI. I'm sorry.
This is free marketing. This is great. I don't think it is any less true, but it's come to mean almost nothing. So when we're thinking about the commercialization of AI, I almost think we need to get to a place where AI isn't mentioned. Now, that's a little hyperbolic, but what I mean by that is, it's almost like if a video gaming company came out and said, buy our video game because it includes software. I mean, it makes no sense in terms of why someone should actually engage commercially. The claim should be, buy this product because it saves you time, because it makes you better at working with patients, because it makes you more efficient in the job you already do. And when you walk around trade shows in this space now, those claims aren't yet being made. And so I think when we think about Edison, it's all about in that framing. It's about how do we leverage the best technology, of which AI is extremely powerful, to capture the advances and deliver them back into the workflow, right where folks need to access them and use them. I think you had my colleague Kaylin Nye on here a couple of weeks back, and she talked about what we're doing with our critical care suite. And the ability to detect a critical solution or condition right at the point of image capture with our mobile X-ray. That is where this industry needs to go, not just building really powerful AI, but then delivering it at the point of decision making. David gave a great example in the stroke care pathway, same in cardiology, same in oncology. David, were you jumping in?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to, I completely agree. And I think one of the things, talking to the stroke specialists, to the neurologists, they couldn't care less. Actually, initially in the first year selling, we really regretted adding the AI to the name. And we said, oh my God, if we only could have gone back and not added, because first of all, they really couldn't care less. They thought, will it make my life better? Will I wake up less at night? Will it allow me to treat the patients faster? And only later, after we got some recognition that this is actually delivering on those metrics, people started getting interested, and we've started actually leveraging, AI as sort of something that's interesting to the geeks in the audience. And I think in that sense, the radiologists are a tough crowd to sell because they are so familiar with using software for various tasks and so familiar with the pain points and the issues, and have suffered, decades of promises from CAD devices that maybe did not fully deliver. That they ask all this question. The neurologists, my experience pitching to stroke specialists was a pitch of 20 seconds. Within 20 seconds, they understand. Okay, you analyze the CTA. You let me know that there's a stroke, so I can get involved faster. Great. Where do I sign? And it's really about.
I think that is an amazing insight, and you're bang on. Like if you're selling something to a radiologist, they'll be like, oh, is there a DICOM viewer? What are the features in the DICOM viewer? Can I view 3D recon? Can I do this? Can I do that? Whereas a neurosurgeon or an interventional neurologist may have never really used one to that extent, right? And so I think it from a productization perspective, that's a very, very cool insight. So just pushing a little bit more on that, David. So in terms of your team or your own like between you and Chris, right? So I'm like kind of both of you. How much time or how much effort do you put into the actual AI, and how much is it on the overall solution bundling?
That's a really good question. I think, first of all, it changes over time. And, we needed an algorithm. We needed to be able to identify LVOs on CTAs. So there was that. But it was very clear that for this to succeed, it has to be part of a real product.
Yep.
Right? So a lot of effort went into that. And I think that if you look at the headcount up until very recently, like the last year, where the algorithms doubled in size, the algorithms were not like a huge part of the Viz.ai engineering workforce. We had more backend engineers, we had mobile developers, we had, it was just, the algorithm is just one piece of the puzzle, and delivering. And by the way, we ran a survey once asking users what is their favorite feature of Viz.ai, and less than half said the AI. Right? People said the viewer, the fact I can view the images from anywhere and really, really fast, really great mobile viewer. People said the chat, I can communicate with my team from a plane. Some people said, yeah, it alerts me on strokes, but it takes just as much effort to make a whole CTA scan viewable within a few seconds. It takes just as much effort to go through all the security certifications that you need. It takes just as much effort to build a mobile app that has an a delightful user experience. And these are things that are just as important for the Viz.ai product.
And before there's a bunch of questions coming in, but like one thing I'm just curious to hear from both of you guys, like, do you think the benchmark for user interface in healthcare is so low that even if you make something that's like a little nice, people are just blown away? Like an example is, like this thing back here, like this is kind of our platform thingy, and it's nothing, it's just a computer with fancy lights, but but people are so enamored by this that it's so enamoring that I'm sitting in front of it. So so do you guys share that that thought, or do you think maybe now interfaces are evolving that are more user centric and all of that?
I mean, I'll start. I think I'm guessing where we both stand on this, Vidur, but I worked at Apple for a while, and their entire approach is you must delight your customers, and in the long run, that's going to be what customers choose. I think about my husband's a primary care physician, so I hear a lot of complaints around the dinner table about the EMR. We have a very exciting dinner table. And I think we're at the risk of leveraging AI in making some of the same mistakes. So the EMR, we took a really terrible paper process and made a really terrible digital process. If we do the same thing with AI, we are really selling ourselves short in the transformation stepwise change that AI could make, right? So if we just leverage AI to approach creating a radiology report in the exact same method we do today, we're missing the chance to rethink the entire UX. Same thing about the stroke workflow. David's talking about, could someone sit on a plane and work on this on their iPad while they're in flight? Sure, why not? Let's think about it that way, right? And so I think it's essential, and I think it matters. Let me throw a framework out there, and I know this came up in past panels. I'm curious to see where the audience is more interested, but when we think about AI embedded in the workflow, I do like to segment it as upstream and downstream. Upstream being embedded in devices themselves. So how can we leverage AI, deep learning, and things like reconstruction, case-based technology to create better images, faster images, higher quality images, optimize signal to noise ratio, et cetera. And in that case, UX is all of that matters, right? You're literally going in and making a sale, engaging with a customer about the experience. When you look downstream, I think right now we are offering as a set of vendors a pretty horrible UX experience when it comes to introducing AI. You've got 17 pop-ups going on. You've got, you have to go to one app to get something quantified, another app to get, a guess at what the condition may be. And so I think when you fast forward 5 years, the winner in this downstream space will be the technology solution that can deliver the insights across AI working together from many different points and give you a clean way to know the path forward as a clinician or a radiologist. And so I think we need to think about UX differently if we're talking about upstream or downstream. And I think the levels of maturity are different. And I think we have a lot of growth to do in the downstream arena about thinking about our customer first and not just trying to run forward to market with cool technology that can have a specificity or sensitivity that is higher than the competitor.
Yep. No, I think that sums it up beautifully. Let's start taking some questions. Maybe we'll start from the Q&A bar. So first one, very difficult question for David. Can you disclose what is the revenue of Viz.ai 4 years after incorporation and the business model? if you can't, any surrogates or any kind of indicators you can give, like
Yeah, so
lives.
Viz is live in over 400 hospitals across the US.
Oh, wow.
We're processing about between 40 and 50,000 patient scans a month.
My God. All
Um,
CTAs.
Sorry?
All CT angiograms.
CT, non-contrast CT angiogram and CT perfusion. We have 3 FDA cleared products.
Yeah.
And so, that's, I guess, a good proxy for revenue. In terms of a business model, I think this is a very important point, and goes back to, I mean, if the theme here is selling AI, I think the business model is very important. First of all, it's and again, taking a leaf from Silicon Valley book of understanding a B2B sales process, and I was saying how you sell. And I think this is seeing a lot of early stage companies in this space. Everybody, comes with good intentions, best intentions, and build something that obviously can save lives, something that helps the patients and helps the physicians. But what many companies are missing is the business case. How do you sell this to the hospital, to the provider? And what I hear a lot when talking to entrepreneurs is, yeah, but I mean, this is obviously makes money for the insurer. The patient does better, so someone benefits from that. And that stuff just doesn't fly, because you need to motivate the person who's going to sign the check, and that's not the insurer, that's the provider. So the business model basically builds around the fact that we not only increase the level of care by allowing them to treat faster and better and improve patient outcomes. And by the way, we have now research that has been published that demonstrates that this indeed, shortens time, reduces length of stay in the neuro ICU and in hospitalization in general. We're also increasing the top line of the hospital by allowing them, there's less leakage. They don't miss on opportunities to operate, which is, both important for their own stroke certification, but also there's a financial incentive for them to intervene on more patients, because there's a contribution margin there that's pretty substantial. So the business model is we go to a system, we say, how many strokes are you doing a year? What's your catchment area? You can do the simple math of what's the potential. And we say, okay, with Viz, you will do more, right? So it's a different pitch for the physician, and it's a different pitch for the administrator / the person who signs the check.
No, I guess that thank you so much for that insight. And this is precisely what we needed from this webinar, which is like Viz's secret sauce. I think to kind of just summarize, it's like you build a great product, but then you sell it to the right people, and it has to be valuable, right? So I guess that's great. The next question is, oh yeah, it is the same. It was, we are an AI startup, want to know how do we arrive at a robust go-to-market leading to revenues, literally any secret sauce from both GE and Viz. So I guess, this is kind of answered. There's like a barrage of questions coming in. So we'll move on to the next one. Next is again from Dr. Korchi.
Vidur, one thing I would just comment on that. I mean, a huge part of my job is working with startups across this ecosystem. I mean, I think the latest stats, something like 200 VC-backed medical imaging startups with over $800 million of backing, with a projected market of $1 billion in 2023. I mean, we can argue about if those numbers are accurate, but directionally, there is so much in this space. But the number of startups who still come with their greatest claim being their data science stats, as opposed to a validated customer approval of the benefit it gives them, is a little staggering to me still in this space. So, that is one just insight I would emphasize is spend time living and breathing the workflows of the people that you're building the product for. because otherwise you're doing data science on a shelf, which does not translate into product. So it
I
may
think
not need to be
that's
said,
great.
but
Living
I'm
and
going to
breathing the
say it.
workflow of your clients is precisely what we've also seen. A lot of people get infatuated with the AI first, and then go ahead and try to figure things out. So that's great. And I think that's also the unique insight that Viz brings to the table, right? That David mentioned, that neither of them was attached to radiology, and
Sure.
neither of them was attached to deep learning, right? So which is why they could build a radiology product for non-radiologists, and it's now super successful. So I guess that's a super cool insight. Thanks for that, Karley. Next is, again related, we haven't seen any acquisitions of AI radiology startups by established radiology manufacturers, such as GE, Philips, and Siemens. How important is AI in the growth and innovation strategy of these players? Maybe, Karley, you can answer that from GE's perspective. We have some hints on where that might be going. And have they decided to buy? Have they decided to build instead of buy? Right, which is again very insightful question. And are they really convinced about the opportunity of AI? Right, so I think three questions, right? The AI roadmap, the build versus buy. I would be super interested in hearing your thoughts on that. And I think what links to the first part is, how convinced are you about the opportunity of AI itself?
Yeah, sure. I'll weigh in on that, and then you can redirect me where you want me to go, because that's a big question. So I'll start with the build versus buy question. I started by mentioning this, but I think partnership in this space is the cornerstone of success. And so when we think about the matrix of what AI can address, Keith Dreyer has a beautiful visualization of this that he's been using for many years now, right? That shows on the x-axis all the different anatomies, on the y-axis all the different modalities, and within there every single different condition that you can find at the cross section of those, right? It's literally an infinite space that AI can address. No one company is going to do this on their own. It's going to be impossible. And so when we think about partnership as GE Healthcare, we think about kind of three legs to the stool. So one, technology vendors. We actually really focus on leaning into our partnerships with Amazon, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Intel, because we as a healthcare company don't want to spend any of our time building the pure technology underlays that an Amazon is going to excel in these data science space, that an NVIDIA is going to excel in the GPU space, that an Intel is going to excel in the optimization of runtime in a hospital setting. And so we partner obsessively there so that we can focus on the pure healthcare play. The other pillar is the pockets of innovation who are actually doing the building. And this is where I think you're not seeing a lot of acquisitions in this space, because there is not a silver bullet, one AI solution that addresses the entirety of the radiologist or cardiologist or oncologist need. From a GE perspective, when I meet with customers all over the world, I want to figure out how to weave the solutions that are coming from multiple different startups or from academic pockets of innovation into the fabric of a full solution to address a need. And so you're not seeing acquisitions because there is not a silver bullet in this space. It takes working across multiple different vendors to deliver a full solution. And then third is partnerships with clinicians. We have actively, Vidur knows this because you're one of our partners, but we have actively partnered with the best and the brightest in terms of clinical partners to not just build the best AI, but test it in the wild, because you really only get one first impression. And if you bring something to a clinician and it fails, right? We saw this with CAD in the mammography space, where I've heard from many clinicians, hey, I only use it because I get reimbursed higher. That's a failure, right? And so we need to partner with clinicians to test it. And so I think that's a little bit how we think about build versus buy and partnership, and we lean heavily into the structure of partnering across those three dimensions.
No, that's yeah, David, please.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think everything Karley said is 100% accurate. I want to add the angle, maybe, based on interactions with VCs in the capital markets. First of all, there was a big wave of these AI companies emerging in 2015 to 2017. This is when VCs would write the seed checks. And now it's much harder. I think there's less seed investments in this space because everybody says, well, one of these companies is going to hit the home run. We'll invest in the Bs, in the B rounds, in the C rounds, and so on. And I think it takes 5 to 10 years for companies to mature, and we will see acquisitions in the next 5 years as we reach that stage. The other thing to keep in mind, again, comparing this to a typical B2B startup and how they grow, is that they, both we have AI, which is capital intensive, and the regulation, which is capital intensive, and a market that's very hard to penetrate with very, very long sales cycles. Yep. All this means that you need much more capital up front, which means you're raising more money, which means everybody involved is looking for, for more, right? I think if you compare companies that are working outside of AI and outside of healthcare grow much, much, much faster.
Yeah.
Right. So you see the acquisitions at earlier stages. Just healthcare is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
No, also it's about implications, right? Like some app doesn't do very well, or it really doesn't matter. But a couple of wrong reports in a million are still significant enough for any medical device software to fail. Which is actually a good segue into the next question. Maybe David or Karley, like either of you can answer this. How have the updated FDA guidelines for software as a medical device helped to productize faster? Have they helped? And what more is needed? Either of you guys can take this.
David, I can let you start.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a good question, and the FDA, our experience has been supportive. Our process with getting Viz.ai cleared through the de novo pathway was a collaborative effort with the FDA. Well, sometimes we felt they were, pushing us and contributing because the feeling was that they understand the value of this is clinically, and also they want.
David, I just want to point out to everyone that Viz's product was, I think, the first AI algorithm ever to get FDA approved, right? I'm right?
Yeah, I think, it depends on how we define an AI, but I think first deep learning, and we sort of created this category of computer-aided triage, where I believe
where an algorithm was trained on something and then got FDA approval. Let's say.
And the vast majority of clearances, use our device as a predicate.
Yeah.
Nice. So, on the other hand, the FDA, as a regulatory body, they care about the patients. They care about the security. They don't want to see an influx of untested technology. So I think they're constantly evaluating and reevaluating how they want, what type of evidence they want to see when people enter the market. And as they're seeing certain, probably some problems with other products, I think they will be, I wouldn't say hiring the bar, but at least refining the requirements from future AI products.
Got it. Karley, do you want to add something, or should we go on?
We have a lot of questions. We can keep going. I mean, I respect, the FDA has to balance speed of innovation with ensuring safety in a technology that is still evolving, right? So I think their approach, I really respect the way they're approaching. I've had a chance to do some work groups with them and meet with the group there. And I think the emphasis on kind of the post-market continued surveillance is a really smart one. And so I think David did a good job of kind of summarizing that specific question. So I'll let you pick the next one, Vidur.
No, I'm just going in order. I guess you guys can see the questions too, right? There's like a Q&A tab at the bottom.
Yeah.
I mostly just see happy birthday wishes to Viz.
No, that's the chat. You need to open. There's a Q&A.
Let's take a question from the chat now. Interesting. So what is a message for hobby AI developers, and how can they get attention of serious commercial players? Quite an interesting question. This is from Dr. Debashish Dash. He leads informatics at one of India's largest scientific research institutes. So how can a hobbyist AI developer get the attention of the bigwigs, whether for a acquisition or maybe even for a job, right? Because he comes from an educational institute, so maybe that's any thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm happy to share my thoughts. I think it's two different questions. If you're an AI hobbyist and you build something and you hope to get it acquired, I mean, I don't want to be the mean guy, but I think, the lessons we learned, the distance between a POC or a prototype of an AI algorithm and a production-ready product are so big. And, that experience that I'm getting mostly from academics, where they say, we published a paper, we have an algorithm for this and that. And as you start dealing, you understand it's, data from one institution, from one modality, from there's a lot of work. I think most of the work is after you get the thing to work on a preliminary level. In terms of a job, that's a completely different story. I mean, get stuff out there, write a blog post, share your results, make them known, participate in Kaggle competition. We have an engineer who we hired because of his success at the Kaggle competition. So I mean, I think that's the way to go.
Got it. No, thanks for that. The next question, that I think we should maybe address is from Monit Jadhav. He says, do you think of using Edison to connect AI products, apps as GE calls it, undermines the AI product itself? AI companies need their product to be visible and not sitting behind Edison, I feel. I promise I'm not planting these questions. The AI product should, to my understanding, stick to standards that will integrate into the workflow without Edison and make itself visible. Interesting. They are not apps, but solutions. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So first of all, when we're working with the ACR, the Data Science Initiative group, on how we actually set up the APIs into Edison, right now it is the wild west in terms of how these apps are being built, and driving towards standards is going to allow us as an industry to solve more problems at scale. So I completely agree with that point, and we're working with the ACR on that front to that end. I think the reality of the situation, though, is these apps feel completely disparate right now. It is not a Netflix experience where you go into one location to see many different solutions all aggregated together. It is separate solutions and separate screens. It's like if you had to use Google Maps, and when there was a traffic or accident, you'd have to go open a different app to see what the new route should be, right? So, part of what Edison does is aggregate all those insights into one place. But the other part of Edison does is it essentially is just infrastructure for those full solutions to ride on if you want to leverage the global scale that GE Healthcare has. Correct. So I completely agree with the point that we don't need to be a layer on top if the solution fits the need and acts in a standalone manner. In that case, we can just be a distribution channel that you can land on top of and interact with the 150 plus countries that we operate in. I'm
Absolutely. And I
completely in
think,
alignment with
some non-AI examples of that, I think most of us have seen, for example, Magic from, synthetic MR is kind of distributed by GE.
Yep,
Arteries is 4D Flow has
sure.
been sold all over the world by GE. So I think it comes down to a strategic decision as to do you want to be in a place where you press a button and you're present like all across the world, at least in theory? So thanks for that, Karley. The next question is addressed to David, and it's from Girish, and then Minnie. I think David, you know her. Also, also builds on that. So the question is, what did it take to get your first commercial revenue? How many pilots or field evaluations did you need before there was enough evidence to convince customers? And then Minnie goes on to ask, given that the sales cycles are so long, can you share some tactics that worked for you in shortening the sales cycle? Um,
Awesome. So first of all, hi Minnie. Minnie is like one of my favorite people in the world. Used to work for Viz.ai and was really instrumental in our data collection efforts in the early days. I mean, should probably write a book someday about her adventures in getting data around the world. So I think I'm going to give you the honest answer, which is zero, right? We didn't need pilots and proofs for first commercialization. What we needed was partners who bought into the vision, and we found those partners in leading neurologists and neurointerventionists who actually supported Viz from from very early, because they said, this is what the field needs. You guys are going to execute. We're going to help you because it's going to help us. And yes, of course, we'll install it on our site, and we're happy to provide the feedback and help you build what we need, because to help us do our jobs better. So, our first commercial installation at Erlanger Hospital in Chattanooga, Tennessee, was based on, the head of neurology there, Dr. Tom Devlin, who was bought into the Viz vision. So, again, I think what you need there is just an extremely appealing story. We did have sites using Viz.ai before. We had a site in Israel. We had at some point a site in India, but it was for our own technical, learning and feedback and improving things both on the backend, hidden technology side and on the user side. It's not like we got data from there. If you really want, getting actually statistically significant samples that demonstrate that Viz saves times would have taken too long. You needed people who believe, and people who partner with you in a meaningful way.
We're like kind of out of time. If you guys have time, we could carry on for another 15 minutes, if that works.
Yeah, I'm good for another 15 minutes.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, and David, any secret on shortening the sales cycle, or like you had like zero unpaid pilots? So I guess your sales cycle was already quite short.
So, again, the average sales cycle for software, at least in the US, is I think 12 to 18 months. And obviously Viz did much better than that. And I think the secret is provide an extremely attractive product that, physicians understand how it's really going to change their lives for the better, and therefore, very happy to be your champions in the organization.
I'll ask that question in a inverse way, David. Did you guys ever say no to a free deployment, prior to getting the first paid one? Like, I'm sure you would have spoken to a bunch of people, and, the moment the commercial discussion comes up, many people would be like, okay, no, you do a 6-month pilot or something, and then we'll decide. So did you have to say no to such pilots, and then you found the one that truly believed in you? Or was it just that it was the first one that...
No, because the relationships were built long in advance when this is just an idea. and you build a relationship over time, right? It's some process they're part of the data collection, they're part of the FDA pivotal study, they're part of brainstorming sessions, and it's obvious that we'll also get write the check at some point. So no, we didn't. And some sites do require a pilot, and sometimes we would be okay with that, at least in the early days. But they would sign a contract. They would sign a contract that says that after 30 days, 60 days, they pay us. We would never say yes. We'll start a pilot, and because by the way, integration is a lot of effort on our side as well, right? We would never do that up front and say, yes, if you like it, then we'll sign a contract.
Yep. No, that's super insightful, because most of the people, I think, are doing exactly that, right? Including like we are guilty as charged as well. So that's super duper insightful. I'm just reading through some of the questions. If you guys find some, like, there's just so many questions. Thank you so much, everyone, for answering these. I will send across David and Karley's email IDs.
A quick comment on the sales cycle question, because I see that coming up in a few different places. I think it's part of the reason, again, why we've invested in Edison, is because, especially in the upstream dynamic where we've embedded AI into ultrasound, MR, X-ray, PACS, whatever it is, the sales cycle actually doesn't change because it's a feature of a larger solution. Yep. But the next sales cycle has the opportunity to be much faster for ourselves and our partners, right? And so this is where, when we go to our customers now, yes, we believe we can win head-to-head in an MR, CT, ultrasound, X-ray sale, but part of the conversation is don't just partner with us on this one purchase. Partner with us because over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to bring you the best of what GE offers and the best of what this ecosystem offers. And we can do that by just deploying it automatically, not going through an 18-month sales cycle, as David mentioned. And so I actually think that's a really important part of why the leadership of GE Healthcare continues to invest deeply in our Edison vision. Let's see what other questions are out there.
Yeah, there's so many of them. There was one very interesting question. So I wanted to ask one question. Sorry, I think I have that right.
You earned it. Yeah.
David, it almost skipped my mind. So Viz.ai is also the only company that's not seen at RSNA. At least, like, you are seen, but the company is not present. What's the thought process behind that?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a very conscious decision, and just as a curiosity.
Maybe I'll just take a quick second and tell everyone what RSNA is. So RSNA is like this. I don't even know what it's a festival of radiology. I was going to say you have this Hindi word called Mela. Which is like, it's a festival of radiology. It happens in Chicago every year. 5 days of just radiology. There were 104 AI companies there, I think, this year. And Viz was not one of them, even though they're like the pioneers and commercially one of the most successful. So yeah, so your thoughts on that, David?
So first of all, the anecdote, 2 years ago, I think, we won the Ant Minis award for the best new software in radiology. And when we got the message that we won, we had, okay, we need some presence at RSNA. So we put a big sign there, stroke alerts or something, and sent a few people, and Chris was there to collect the award. I have nothing but appreciation for RSNA. We do send some of our algorithm team there to learn and to talk and see what other people are doing, but that's not our audience. Yep. We go to the strong conference with conference. I mean, first of all, we're on a startup, we're on a budget. You can't go to all the conferences. It's a distraction and super expensive. We go to the stroke conference, to the International Stroke Conference, American Society of Neuroradiologists, the SVIN, and all those much smaller conferences, right? We go to a conference of 500 people versus RSNA, which is 50,000 people, so 2 orders of magnitude less, but there's 2 orders of magnitude more customers there, right?
Yeah.
And we're the only software company, at least in, 2, 3 years ago, we're the only software company, so it's also much, much easier. You're shining, you're sexy, you're talking about AI. I remember we had Chris Mancy, our CEO, in the International Store Conference of 2018, gave a talk about AI. And the halls were so packed with people coming to listen. It was in our booth that actually the fire marshal came and said, guys, this is a fire hazard. There's so many people here. Because it's new and fresh, right? And you go to RSNA, you have an AI pavilion. You have like hundreds of companies, right? And so from our perspective, it goes to where I started from of really, what is the problem you're solving? Who are you solving it for? Who's the user? Who's going to buy it? And go there and talk to your users. And that's just not RSNA for us.
Hey, that's super interesting. There's so many questions. How do you identify your POC for your pitch in an organization with multiple layers in the administration? What's the key differentiator? I think this is super important. Like, who do you pitch to? Like, who do you even like? I want to sell to some hospital. Who do I, and like, my uncle works there. Who do I ask him to connect me to? Either of you can take that.
Karley, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you're selling, right? But you want to find the decision maker. So if you're selling into the enterprise, you need to be talking at the CIO, CTO level, because it is a software solution. So if you think about PACS, that impacts across the institution. If you are selling in to have more of a point solution or something that impacts a certain department, you want to get the head of that department, but also have people at the table who are key thought leaders and influencers who will be using those products. I always think that's super important to involve them in the dialogue because that's what's happening once you leave, is they're going and they're discussing with the actual users of the product or solution. So it's important to have those right stakeholders at the table. But at the end of the day, it comes down to knowing who's going to decide around a purchase of your product and then who's going to use the product. And you need to engage both those stakeholders and points of contact when you're thinking about commercial go-to-market motion.
Yeah. I agree completely. I just want to add on top of that you don't need to invent methods for B2B sales. There's tons of books and all, the process of identifying your champion, your adversary within the organization, who needs to say yes, who can say no, who signs the checks. I mean, I'm not a salesperson myself, but
you're not.
To salespeople,
I was going to say, like, are you the chief marketing officer also?
No, not at all. You should see that guy. But it's really, there's a method and there's a theory. I remember our VP sales, Steve Freed, told me, sales is not about being nice to someone. There's a science to that, and you go and you learn that, and then you execute it, and you measure yourself, and you keep improving, and that sort of answers the question, because you need to do the research to understand. Like for us, think about, for example, the IT person at the hospital. He can say no. He can say this solution is not secure. I'm not connecting us to the cloud, right? He is someone we need to get buy-in from. And he has nothing to gain. He has only things to lose. He has nothing to gain from saying yes. So how do we appease him? And it's actually something that, for Viz.ai is we invest a lot in our cybersecurity and cybersecurity certifications and all that. We have 7 ISO standards related to cybersecurity. We have SOC 2. We have it's really a lot of effort. But this is something we do, first of all, to keep patients' data safe, but also because we understand this is what the security person, the IT person at the hospital needs to feel okay with this.
Got it. No, that's really, really insightful, especially the part about you not being the sales guy. So another very, very interesting question, and maybe a topic that's not discussed as much. what is the role of the patient in AI acceptance? When it's not invisible, when it's like very, very visible, uh, what, how, do you guys think about this at all? Or do you think the patient doesn't care, like in the era of Google and Facebook and whatnot?
I mean, I think right now, most of the commercial activity we see in healthcare around AI is directed at the provider or maybe the payer. But I think when you think about patients, it even more needs to be invisible, right? I mean, we don't think about the power of Siri because it has AI. We think about it because we just use it to make ourselves more effective, right? When you've got a load of laundry in your arms and you yell out to Alexa to order more detergent because you're out, you're not thinking about, oh, this uses AI, so I'm excited about it. You're thinking about it because it's beneficial. And so I think if you are building a product for a patient, your mentality should be the exact same as if you're building it for a provider or a payer or a pharma, whatever it is what problem am I solving? And how do I harness this new technology? Just like, how do I harness the best software development? How do I harness the best hardware to go solve that problem? I think it is just as important to think about workflow for the patient as it is for the provider.
Nice. No, so just, I think I'll just take closing thoughts from you guys. David, you can go first. Like, what was the toughest part of selling, Viz.ai's softwares, and like, how did you overcome that? And because like we've talked about all the good stuff, just,
I think that the toughest part was, at least early on, selling for cheap. First few deals were not very high numbers. We needed them. We wanted to get the validation, and it was, was very happy to get those deals signed, but also kind of frustrating that we knew we were providing way more benefit than, and we're, at least initially, we're not successful at capitalizing on the value that we were providing. But then we realized we're getting something else out of that. We're getting a reference customer, we're getting experience, we're getting all that. So that sort of smoothed it a bit. But it was a bit painful to close a deal for less than you thought that your product is worth.
Nice. And Karley, what about you? What was the toughest, conversation or sales pitch or whatever related to Edison that you've had to do in the last
Sure.
years?
I think for me, it was overcoming the hype of what AI was and AI wasn't. 3-4 years ago at RSNA, the conversation was like, is this going to replace my job? What is this going to mean? And, that evolved to, okay, how do I know that I can trust this? And now it's evolved to, how do I pick what makes me most efficient, right? And so I think that evolution has been the toughest part in selling, and that's both with our customers and even internally is, I think one of the themes that I take away from this discussion today with David is almost the irony that a company with .ai and someone who leads an AI organization, the number of times both of us have said, it's not about the AI, right? And so I think shifting that dialogue in a selling motion has been one of the most challenging, but the most important paradigm shift if you're going to have commercial success in this space.
No, great. Sorry, David, you were saying something?
No, I completely agree. I couldn't agree more.
No, great. I think that's a great note to end an AI webinar on, that it's not about the AI. No, but I think that's key, right? Which is, and I think the world is realizing this, that it's about the value that you provide and not how you provide the value. Like, I literally give this example to people that, we are living in a world where apparently AI can read chest x-rays, AI can read CT angiograms, AI can do all sorts of stuff. But I still pay a shit ton of money to print out labels to put on, we do a bunch of genomics tests. So we have these barcodes that we print on and put on these tubes. And like, I pay way more money than what I should for that. But just the value that little piece of paper printed automatically provides to me is so high that I'm willing to pay for it, right? So I think that's what makes a product useful, and that's what I guess, like, even we are trying to figure out, and you guys already have. So with that, thank you so much, and I hope to keep seeing you guys in person sometime, whenever this thing ends or goes down, or we figure out a way of traveling with masks, God knows what. But thanks, Karley. Thanks, David. Always a pleasure to speak to you guys. Karley,
Thank
hope
you.
you're well.
Thanks, folks, and thanks for the good questions.
Thank you,
Appreciate
everyone,
it.
for joining in. Really happy that so many people turned up. Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.